Hello, check it out. I just noticed that I have an OX Sound sticker on my water bottle. That's pretty cool. Alright, it's been a while. I have not been on top of my YouTube game, and for many reasons. One of them is just that, I have a normal job, which is making music. And I'm not gonna get into all of that, but it's not easy to keep a schedule with this stuff, so... Oh wow. Oh wow. Let me show you what I'm eating. These Finnish candy I bought over the summer. Check it out. I don't know if you can see this. So that's a picture of an ant peeing. It's they have all these funny candies. Like let me show you some of these other ones. Come on, focus, guy. This is like a rat coughing. And then this one, what is this one? Kind of lewd. It's like a baboon's butt. These candies have been around since forever, or we used to eat these when we were kids. It's amazing that they still exist. Anyway, so this video is about Blom, and I promised that I would do this video a long time ago, and then I just, couldn't get to it. But I had actually filmed this whole thing basically like months ago. I don't remember, this was a couple of weeks after I think Blom had come out. And I just really wanted to put together some examples of how I actually use Blom, because I've seen a ton of, confusion about what Blom is, and is it actually worth it, and all this stuff, people complaining about how expensive it is, and just in general, I think a lot of confusion about, is it Sooo or is it Gullfoss or what is it? And a lot of people have put out some really great videos on this topic already, so this isn't really honestly that groundbreaking or anything. This is really just because I promised to do this, and I wanted to just show people how I personally use it. So maybe there's some interesting things here, I don't know. I'm also going to just kind of I came to the realization that in order for me to be able to make videos on YouTube, I have to kind of stop caring a little less about how much I edit these and how involved I make these. So honestly, I'm just gonna start probably putting my effort bar a little lower, and I'm just gonna post stuff, and it might be kind of ranty, I guess, and it might be just kind of whatever, and if somebody likes it, great. If somebody doesn't like it, I don't care. This isn't my job. And maybe one day I'll make more of these or whatever, and I'll up the ante on the production side or whatever. But honestly, I just like making videos, and I like talking about random stuff. So I'm probably just gonna try this format maybe from now on for a while. I don't know, just to see how it goes and how I feel about it. And just I'm literally testing stuff out as I go. This is what a lot of people had told me about YouTube in general, is that you should just start doing it and just do stuff that you like to do, and don't think about it too much. So this is me doing that. Yeah. Even just speaking to this microphone and looking at the camera and doing stuff. This is all, I don't know, it's just so weird kind of in a way. I'm in this room by myself talking to a camera, and I don't know, you know what I mean? There's this always this weird sense of showmanship or something in videos that people do, and I don't know, this isn't a presentation, this is just me doing stuff. Whoa. Okay, alright, you get the point. So I'm gonna go into this video that I shot, and you can look at it if you feel like. And comment below, bro. Was there anything else I wanted to say about this? Not really. I had a great summer. We went to Finland. It was beautiful. Maybe I'll post some clips about that. But yeah, as I guess, just a little side note, I do want to talk. I've really been wanting to talk about the AI stuff. And I've literally I started scripting a video for that, and then I realized that's just not my thing. I don't know if I I don't know if I'll ever be reading off of a teleprompter or not. I might want to try that just to see how it feels, because that's kind of an interesting thing. Maybe for certain types of videos I'll do that, but anyway, this is definitely not that. But the AI topic is it's just moving so quickly, of course, that it's like impossible to like, with my schedule, to try to put content out as things happen. So my strategy with that is I'm just gonna probably like do periodic things here and there, but I think I have to put out some sort of rant about it at some point, because there's just so much about it. Anyway, I'm gonna skip my old intro and just go straight into it. Here's Blom. So here's the plugin. I made a user default preset here, and it's basically just, I mean, literally the only difference is that the amount knob is all the way at the end here of this first little section before it gets into the squash mode. We'll talk about that. I'm just going to show you some examples of what this thing can do, and then we'll revisit them and kind of show you how I use these things and get to these sorts of end results with it. So here we go. As you can see, that one's pretty intense. It's a OTT sort of emulator for me. Here's another example. Much more subtle there. Here's another one. You can see this one is the same preset, but just applied to another drum part. All right, so as you can see, those are a little bit more subtle ways of using it. It's not completely OTT'd out. Here's another one. Again, that's a little bit more intense. And there, as you can see, I'm using MidSide stuff. We'll return to that. Here's a few synth presets that I made and I'm kind of messing around with. Here's another one. Couple more here. Also pretty intense there. Here's one more synth guy here. That one would sound nice with the kick underneath it. Then we got this like automation stuff that I just kind of messed around with, really. So here's just the really basic thing. And then with the first Blom enabled, you'll hear it starts to do a sort of sidechaining thing, but it's not exactly like your traditional type of sidechaining. You know, it's a little bit more akin to something like what Sooo does, but even that's not quite the same. So you'll see what I mean here. Here's the actual preset. You can see the sidechain is enabled. All right, and then I kind of went nuts with this last one here. Basically, I mapped an LFO to a bunch of different parameters inside of Blom, and this is happening before the sidechain, and you can see it's kind of going crazy here. So if I play it with sidechain, all right, so obviously that's getting kind of weird and nerdy with it, but hey, like, you can do that. Why not? Last but not least, there's just in like sort of a mastering example. I'll play that real quick and then I'll go through some of these again and talk about them a little bit more in detail. All right, so here's this track that I started without any mastering except for like a little bit of compression and stuff like that, but pretty basic. Versus. Those are like the main sort of use cases that I've found to be where I gravitate towards with this plugin most of the time. But, I mean, I'm still learning. There's a lot you can do with this, and it is quite capable. Just put it that way. Let's get into this first one. I want to show you a couple things that I've sort of discovered. So here's this drum groove. I'm going to bypass this, and I'm going to actually start completely fresh. Go to my user default presets. Some of the main things that you need to understand about this plugin is this amount knob is crucial. And as you can see, it's divided into two different sections. There's this first ring here, and then there's this last little bit here over there, which says squash here. And basically, when you're operating in this sort of first initial area, I'll just show you. You'll notice the volume doesn't change, but you'll notice that this bar graph down here does start to fluctuate. And this whole area is meant for more subtle type of control. And it's very useful for mastering. It's very useful for just general balance. And basically, the way that I like to use this area is I set it to, I don't know, somewhere, maybe I usually tend to lean a little bit more intense. And then I start to mess with the bands, because these bands are definitely doing things. And you'll notice, I'll show you an example. So if I have this at 0 and I start doing stuff with the bands, see, there's nothing happening. If I reset all these, and if I move the amount knob further, you can see even with the bands completely still and right in the middle, this graph down here starts to move. And that is representative of what the plugin is actually doing. So much like your soothes and your gullfosses and things like this, there's like sort of analyzing the signals that's coming in, and it starts to intelligently shape the sound right away. But you can sort of then choose how that shaping is done yourself. So you can see, you can really quickly kind of shape the sound. And now if we get into the squash area, reset these again, you'll notice something. Right, so it starts to kind of compress. This area is more akin to like the sort of soothe type, gullfoss type area. But again, it's not that. But then the squash parameter completely puts it out of the ballpark. It stops acting anything like any of those other tools. And as you could see from my examples before, you could really get some like intense sounds out of this and really change your sound pretty drastically. So one of the things to keep in mind now when you do end up operating in this squash area is these two buttons down here that you can see have the word set on them. And so the way that they function is they're sort of listening to the input signal and the output signal. And when you press the squash calculator set button, you'll see that this squash meter changes. And here, I'll do that here in real time. And you can see this number here being calculated change. And you can either hold it down or press it once. I find that holding it down gets you maybe a little bit more of an accurate response, and you can kind of choose where to let go based off what you're hearing. And then the wet trim does the same, but basically the wet trim is trying to keep the output level the same as the original. So if let's say the squash setting is actually higher and we like it there. Now if I bypass the plugin, you notice there's a big difference in volume. So if I set this wet trim, you can see that now it's sort of found that level that matches the original incoming signal. So you can sort of A/B the changes that you've made to the original audio more one-to-one and not get fooled by, loudness and stuff like that. So the way that I usually end up working with it is, let's say everything is reset. If I know that I'm going to be working in the squash department, I usually go to the squash and I'll kind of slam it. I'll immediately first click on the squash calculator. And then the wet trim. Weirdly, it's about equal there. If I squash it more. Yeah, now it's pulling it down a little bit more. But if you do it the other way around, it kind of doesn't work the same. Like here, I'll show you. If I start again from scratch and I set the wet trim first, let's squash it. All right, so it found it to be about 6.6, which matches that. But if I now go and calculate the squash, you can see the level starts to creep up again, and now you have to do the wet trim again. So basically, you want to set the squash amount and then the squash calculator value. That's at least how I usually tend to work with this. And of course, like, if you want to push it harder than this squash area like really lets you, you can always just slam this squash calculator all the way up, basically. And you can see the volume just dips like crazy because it's just getting absolutely destroyed. And let me go to high value here. And now I really have to, I can set the wet trim here, and this is probably gonna shoot to plus 24, watch. All right, because it's trying to compensate for the squash, what's happening there. And then now from here, like, if you want to be super crazy OTT, like, this is basically the setting. You're like squashing it 100%. You're smashing the squash calculator value, this gain staging value here. If you read the description, it says, calibrate squash gain staging, compensate high input levels with lower values, and vice versa. See, we haven't even touched these dials yet, and it's already just like, it's just like slammed, right? So now you can go crazy error and just, I mean, the world is your oyster here. I made a couple OTT presets. So here's like a basic one. This was, I think, the one that I had earlier. And then I have like a couple more intense versions. I mean, to me, it's, here, I'll show you actually. Here's an actual OTT. This is what an actual OTT sounds like. And that's at like 100%, right? Which is kind of rare. You'd usually be like, I don't know, whatever, not that, but I mean, whatever. Sometimes you just want to go crazy, but so there's that. If I compare it to my insane setting, or like insane, the first one, Actually, yeah, Insane 2 is probably closer. Actually, and it's funny because OTT kind of tends to, at least on this track, really kill the lows. I mean, this is just the basic OTT setting. I haven't done anything to it, which is like very much not what you want to do. You want to actually learn how to use the thing and tweak it to your, you know, actual sound source. But so like if I want to get a little bit more closer to this Blom one, which has a lot more like bottom end, I have to bring up the low end here and, you know, do some stuff. But this is a crazy setting anyway. So I have a couple other settings here that I'll go through. But anyway, one thing that I also try to sort of I made this preset called let's see, Exciter Test. And here basically I'm taking these two parameters here which focus the area of the amount knob. So if I have it like this and nothing, I'm not pulling these parameters out, it's working on the entire frequency spectrum. Now if I move this slider, let's say to where I had it, 2.6K, it's basically leaving all this stuff alone, and this is the original audio, non-processed, but it's now working in this section. Much like Soothe, you can focus and isolate where you want it to work. So that could be a cool way to sort of just add some sparkle if that's all you're sort of missing, and then you can sort of mix it in here, like, you know, pull this mix down. You know, something like that. But it got me sort of curious about the sound of that. Like, if you listen to that, I was like, well, is there a way for me to mimic that? And because to me, it sounds like it's expanding or upwards compressing, basically. I tried to mimic that with some other actual multi-band tools, and it's kind of interesting. You can't do it with Pro MB, for example. You basically have one type of compression per band here. So, I mean, you can create multiple bands here, but you can only do one instance of these. Like, so if I want to do aggressive upward compression, I can't now add another on top of that, you know what I mean? And in order to get this type of sound that's happening, you have to do both upwards compression or expanding and downwards compression at the same time. That's at least what it sounds like to me. And that's like a fairly standard thing for plugins to do, like on the sometimes that you hear people doing that on the master channel, and that's essentially what OTT is as well. Like as you can see down here on OTT, you know, you got this section down here at the bottom, which is sort of upwards compressing or expanding, however you want to use it. And then you got this section up here that's squashing that expansion back down. So I tried to kind of get similar results to this particular exciter here. And I got sort of close with this Tone Boosters multiband compressor here. Because here you can do, so here you can see I have the same band here. This is at 2.6 kilohertz. And it's first upwards compressing this area, and then it's normal, you know, downwards compressing it. So that the effect is this. If you compare that to Blom, I mean, it's pretty similar. I got it kind of close. Here's an example where they both just go back and forth between each other. Pink is Blom here, and the blue is the multiband compressor. So not perfect, but I mean, that's essentially what I think is kind of happening underneath the hood. And which is interesting because honestly, making this took me exactly like 2 seconds, but making this thing was kind of difficult. Like I had to, first put this here, like, make this band and like turn this mode on upward compression and start to mess with the threshold and the ratio and the range and all this stuff. And then, figure out how it was matching with the downwards compression and all this stuff. And I messed with the drive and all these things. And it wasn't easy. But with Blom, it literally took 2 seconds for me to go like this. I was just like, this is my starting point. I just, was like, okay, I'm going to just go up here. I'm going to be like, I'm going to focus on that area. I'm just going to squash it. And boom, that's it. Like, it's already doing it. So it's very intuitive. It's very easy to use once you start to sort of get the hang of it. I'm able to get results out of this thing that I can't really get with a lot of other plugins this quickly. And it's really just a great tool to just sort of literally, I'm going to keep repeating myself with this, to shape sounds, but it's a very good way of explaining what this plugin does. Anyway, let's look at a few of these other examples here. So this one is a preset that I named Forced Smile because I wanted to try to use this notch tool. You can change how this processing range basically behaves. Yeah, you can either be in this sort of bandpass mode or this sort of notch mode. And the grayed out area here just means that it's not affecting that middle area. So I was like, well, okay, so it kind of, maybe I'll use it in a sort of like a smile curve sort of way. So
let's put a smile on that face.
I'm squashing it and then I'm boosting the bottom and the top. And, the effect is sort of what you go for with EQs and multibands all the time. So it's just cleanly letting the middle ground sit exactly where it is and only affecting the bottom and the top. And this is a very subtle use, so if I crank it, you can hear that sub really comes through there. And then the nice thing about it is, once you have a preset that you kind of like, if you now apply that to another loop, all you really kind of have to do is, here, I'll show you. I'll go to my user preset, and I'll go to this Forced Smile, and I'll reset it. And now I'm using it on this other loop. And even without doing anything and letting all these values be the same, it's still doing something. But now you can, you can set these again based off your new input level. So now it's sort of recalculating and calibrating to what the input is and adjusting everything accordingly. And I honestly like to oftentimes even just leave the amount knob where it is and just try squashing it a little bit more from this, gain staging area. You can get some interesting results that way. All right, so onto this loop. So I'll explain this a little bit more detail here. If I bypass the plugin, you can hear this loop has a little bit more stereo information in it. Mainly in that snare sound, you can hear the reverb sort of splashes out to the sides. So I wanted to see if I could kind of enhance, but then also sort of control that. And this preset is sort of what I came up with. You can see it's using the MidSide quite heavily here. The MidSide portion of this plugin is pretty intuitive once you get it. Again, it's kind of confusing maybe in the beginning, but if you've used MidSide before, you should be able to get it pretty quickly. For me, it just took a second to be like, wait a minute, well, because there's a few different dials here. I'll just reset this. I'll see if I can kind of match what I did there. We'll turn this on MidSide split mode. We'll immediately start to squash it. And I'll set the calculator here. All right, and then now I'll set the wet trim. And I like to compare it immediately just to see what it's doing. All right, so you can hear it's already doing quite a lot. And now you can start to sort of shape it. But before you start touching these, make sure that you're looking at these parameters here. This mid and side function here is basically, it's a visual tool more so than any actual technical tool. So if I have this first of all in link mode, it's analyzing both the mid and the side channels summed together when it's at 100%. But when you unlink them and you go down to 0, you get two different curves down here. See? So basically now when you go to mid and side, you'll be looking at either the mid or the side information on this curve. So to achieve like the most mid-side like effect, you want to unlink these and then leave the focus in the middle so that it's actually affecting both the mid and the side. If you move this slider so that there's the center sort of circle is only the one that's filled, that means that you're only affecting the mids with the tool. If you move it all the way so that there's these two circles on the sides, that means that you're working on the sides. So usually you're going to leave it in the middle, and I like to unlink this most of the time. And now if I play the track, what's up? Oh, hey, what's up, man? Brother? Chilling, man. Just doing a little Blom action.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Doing a video.
All right, a little interference there from my buddy Vaughn. Right, so this is what I was explaining. If I want to accentuate the sides, and usually this like sort of low mid section tends, and this high mid section tends to be the most useful in terms of getting sounds to be wide. So you can really hear that working. And so my idea here was basically I wanted to kind of clear the sides information from the lows and so some of the low mids here, and then accentuate them in the highs. So I was doing kind of something like this. I think they had the attack and release a little bit like this, maybe. Some more lows in the mid range or in the mid band. It's nice to kind of accentuate the subs sort of in the mid band there. And you can see we're getting a little hot now, so let's try to wet trim set again. All right, so that's not exactly where I had it before, but you get the idea. So now when you switch the mid and the side parameters down here, this curve actually represents the side and the mid. If I go from 0 to 100 on the link, you'll hear some of the side information kind of change. I mean, you might have to listen to this in headphones or good speakers. You can hear there's a little bit more glue actually happening when it's linked at 100%, and there's more separation happening when it's at 0. So it's kind of dependent on what you're going for. And actually for this particular part, I kind of like it at 100% because it sounds like the sides are being affected also by the mids. So when the transients hit on the mids, it's kind of splashing the sides nicely. I don't know if that's a good way of explaining that, but it's just something that you're gonna have to mess around with a little bit. And then so now when you switch between the mid and the side, you can see that let me show you like a really big like an extreme example. I want to take all these mid channels, I'm going to boost them on the lows, I'm going to cut them on the highs. I'm going to do the exact opposite with the sides here. So I'm just going to boost the sides on the highs, and so sides are here, sides are down here, and the opposite here. So watch these meters now. So here we're starting on the mid one. See how it's only happening down here? And now if I go to the sides, it's only really happening here. It's like some stuff is creeping up down here still. I mean, that's a wild sound. Let's compare that to where we were. Oh, geez, we're starting to break up. I mean, this is the fun part, just to see if we can, like, kind of destroy it. Let me just smash this. Let me go like this. Whoa. Just, like, disappeared. That's crazy. What if I just... I have the output at 24. This is like... What? I mean, I think I kind of broke... I didn't break it, but it's almost like canceling itself out. What if I unlink him? Whoa. I gotta be careful with that. Ooh, listen to those lasers at the end there. That's wild. I mean, let's see if I can break it. What happens if I switch these around? Okay, so actually now I have it so that the sides are getting killed completely. As you can see, the sides are now completely disappeared here. So that's all information that's just happening in the mids right now. Let's do the opposite. Let's pull all the mids down. I mean, hey, I'm just trying to break this whole thing right now. Let's go all the way up. I mean, that's wild. So that's pretty much just the sides right now. Yeah, see, nothing in the mids right there. Whoa. If I link him, you can hear the sides start to like break apart where that hat is happening in the between here. If I loop that. That's because the hi-hat is happening in the mids, and it's being the sides are now being affected because I'm linking the two parameters. So they're the algorithm that is listening in, it's summed. So mid and the side channels are now linked here. It's listening also to the mids, and because those hats are happening there. Those are the hats, right? Yeah, see those hats that are happening in there? Those are probably just purely on the mids. Let's check that out. Or let's see here. If I mono. Yeah, here I'm just listening to the sides. And now I'm listening to the mids. Hear how much louder those hats are in the mid section. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to get super technical, but this is kind of more technical here. I'm just trying to break this plugin down right now. Anyway, let's move on to something else. I had a couple other things that I just wanted to kind of look at. I'm not even sure what to think about this one. Maybe you guys can tell me, but I just thought this was interesting. So here I just have some white noise coming out of Serum. I'll show you. So this is just the bright white over here. And I'm just outputting it, and this is what it sounds like if I bypass just your basic bright white noise. If I enable Blom and if I go to my default, so nothing is happening, I'll turn the amount all the way down. Everything is good. We're standard. Now if I creep this amount up, look what happens. So it starts to slope the highs down just naturally without anything happening, and these attack and release don't really do anything. Let me go to the high quality mode here. So see that slope? So I thought to myself, like, let me calculate these values here. So now if I bypass, it's about equal to the original white noise. So you can tell, like, it's obviously listening in on the sort of, I'm guessing it's sort of analyzing the stuff on some probably LUFS, because it's very close to what I'm hearing, you know, out here in the studio. The volume is very equal to each other, even though the tonal characteristic is different, but the output level is correct. They match each other. So I was just thinking, like, what happens if I try to even out here? Let me show you. So here you can see it visually. See how that's like functionally like a flat line right there, as white noise kind of bright white is. And if I turn on Blom, you know, you're getting this sort of slope here. It's like, you know, now it's pushing the high, lows up, but it's perfectly gradual. And again, I'm not using any of these parameters here. Like, none of the tone adjustment knobs are doing anything. So it's just naturally doing that to bright white. And it made me think, like, what happens if what do I have to do with these tone knobs to get it flat again? And it just made me realize that this curve down here, this white area, this white line, you know, it really does represent the change in the tonality very accurately. So you can trust it. So watch this. I'm actually made a preset for it called White Noise Flatten. If I turn that on, watch what happens to the frequency on Vision 4X, and watch what happens to the white line down here. See how they're both like almost flat now? And if I bypass, you basically hear exactly the same result. Watch. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So it just made me realize that, like, the line really does represent a sort of equilibrium there. I'm not sure how useful that is, to be honest, but I don't know. I just found it fascinating. Let's move on to this other example. Okay, so OTT is great and all, but there's a sort of one pretty large downside to it, which has to do with how it changes the phase of sounds. So here, I'll show you another example. Here, now I'm just, you know, outputting just a straight square, and I'll show it to you on this oscilloscope here. This is what this basic square wave looks like coming out of Serum. Right? Okay, pretty standard square wave. Now, let's put OTT on, but with the amount at 0. So basically no effect, right? This should be the same, right? There's your square wave. And like I said, my buddy Vaughn reminded me of this. I knew this, but it's good to show that this is, you know, what's happening to your waveforms when you're using OTT and other tools that aren't, you know, linear. There is actually LinearPhase OTT. That's what's happening to your waveform with OTT. Okay, so let's compare OTT now to Blom. Here it is bypassed. Perfectly good looking square. Now I'll enable it, and remember, even enabling OTT, you know, caused the square wave to completely get mangled up. And here is Blom enabled. No change. So that's what you want, ideally. And now if I start to crank the amount, you'll obviously start to see the effects of that. Let's use the default preset real quick. And you can actually really see it here. When I move the amount knob from basically 0 to 7, there's no frequency dependent compression happening. So it's really like independent from adding any gain. But it is still it's still shaping the tone of the square wave. As you can see, it's starting to introduce these little like rounded corners. Right? And I can further shape it from here, you know. I can try to kind of balance it, rebalance it into like a square. And I'm just looking at the white graph here, and the output should start to resemble more of a normal square. It's kind of hard. I'm playing this game of cat and mouse where I'm trying to like push these. It's pretty close. I mean, it's kind of hard to get it exactly the same, but like, I mean, that's not the point here anyway. One of the things that this also reminded me is that in my interview with Hannes, I asked him about this sort of color and the distortion and how I previously was able to get this sort of like distorted sound out of the plugin, and they got rid of that sort of saturation that was happening there. And honestly, at first I was like kind of bummed because I was like, ooh, I always, you know, I like saturation. I'd like to be able to do that. But now that I've been messing around with it more, I actually really, really appreciate that this plugin is clean as a whistle. Like, I can't get this thing to distort anymore. And I really, like, I'm kind of actually now, like I said, I'm very pleased that they didn't go with the sort of color modes and like adding all these like distortion elements, because now you really know that when you're applying Blom to sounds, you're in kind of like a safe space, and you know that you're not going to be like crushing the sound. You're really only shaping the tones. So then if you do want to, you know, add distortion or something, like, go to town, but do it with something else, you know what I mean? If you can get this thing to distort, let me know, because, you know, I haven't been able to. Like, let's do a quick test here. Why not? Like, let's try to break this down again. So I'm just going to slam this. We'll take the square wave, because square wave is ultimately like the most, you can get that thing to go the loudest. It's basically the one wave that you can like absolutely get the most lufs out of. So let's see what happens here if I just, you know, let's crank all the values. Let's go to wet trim all the way down to 0. Let's keep it on stereo mode. Let's go on high attack release. Maybe we'll just go all the way down, amount all the way up. Let's just crank these all the way up. Who cares, you know, like, we're just trying to make sure that we get, you know, we're trying to break this thing, right? So I have a limiter here at the end of my chain. You know, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to take these utilities. I'm just going to go, let's go to 35 dB up. Okay, nothing. Nothing. That's, you know, 35 times 2. Let's go to times 4. Okay, I'm going to pull back the wet trim a little bit here. Let's go down with the output too. Let's just see how many we can do here. Let's go 8. I don't know what's happening there on that initial hit. It's like, let's go to 16. So there's 8. Double that, now there's 16. And we crashed. All right, mission successful. I mean, I think that pretty much confirms that you can't get Blom to distort. I mean, I just sent, like, I don't know, somebody can calculate how many decibels I just sent to it. If it can distort, it's obviously some sort of glitch, and you have to really try to break the thing. Again, I just like that that's what they ended up choosing to do here. All right, I got 2 more things to show you. There's like 1.5 million things you could use this plugin on, of course. There's no way I'm going to be able to show everything, but I just wanted to show 2 other little things. One is kind of a standard thing. The other is kind of like a weird, quirky thing. I'll start with the weird, quirky thing. So over here, I have a kick drum, just for reference. Just doing 4 on the floor. Then I got this poly synth here happening with some chords. Here's what it sounds like with and without the sidechaining. And here's with the kick. So you can see it's sort of like you can do all these other moves with it, right? Like, so you don't have to just have it like kind of duck like you would normally. So as I move these mid and high bands, it'll start to shape, you know, the sidechaining, you know? So if I put that with the kick. Let me show you the other sidechain that's happening. So there's another instance of Blom before this sidechain Blom. And as you can see down here, there's all this weird stuff happening. And basically I'm sending this LFO to control some of these parameters here, and this is what it looks like. You know, it looks like the whole plugin is just kind of glitching out. Here is the trigger for the sidechain, and the way that I did it is I'm using Ableton 12's new generate thing, and so let's just preview this. Let me take the kick sidechain off and just show you what's happening with this one plugin. So here's what it sounds like. And so now, because I have this down here with the generate, I can kind of switch the pattern around however I want to. Right, so you can really kind of get some fun results out of that. Obviously, like, this is not the standard way to use Blom, but I don't know, I was just trying to like do something weird with it, and that's kind of what I came up with. Yeah, there you go. I don't know, try some stuff, send some weird sidechain things into it. I don't know, let me know if you run into something really cool that's useful. The last thing that I'll show you is just a basic mastering thing. So here's this example track that I've sort of just been working on. It's just like a beat that I made. It's got a little bit of compression happening, some basic stuff. Here's like a little basic master SSL bus thing that's happening before Blom. And I'll bypass Blom first so you can hear what the track sounds without it, and then I'll enable it. So check it out. All right, so you can kind of hear what's happening there. Basically, I'm using Blom in MidSide mode, which is, you know, it just gives you more options to work with. You can do some widening on top of the sort of glue that's happening. And just mixing it in just a little bit, you know, it's basically almost fully at 100%, but just some of those transients I'm pulling back, letting through. Really, it's like that clap, for example. That's kind of the one that I wanted to control. Like if I bypass that, you'll hear how much that clap pokes out through the mix. You can hear how that clap is getting really like focused. It's just getting, it's just like really nicely sitting in the mix on this. And I mean, I'm probably squashing it maybe a little bit too much, but I really, just want to make sure that you kind of hear what it's doing there. Yeah, I'm not having the plugin affect anything below like sort of 40 something hertz because like if I pull this all the way down, you'll see what's happening here at the bottom. Like, I'm not sure if I really want like 20 hertz being affected like that. I really don't even know. Like, let's look at that on an analyzer real quick. If I just let it go all the way, let's see if it actually, how much it changes the bottom end there. Let's look at it on the spectral here. Okay, so we see a bump here. Let's see if I pull this back to like 40 something. See if that disappears or not. Okay, a little bit. Not a whole bunch. I mean, I'm not filtering it. So this is the one thing that I didn't show you but this bottom slider down here is actually a normal filter. So if I pull this up, like let's go to like 40 something. This is too much, but like check it out. It's adding, I think it's a 18 dB, was it, filter? I forget, something. But I mean, it actually wasn't too bad there. But you can hear like it's actually a filter, right? And same with the top one, it's just opposite. So if you wanted to work as an actual filter, then you can. Anyway, so that's Blom. All right, so that's the gist of it. Like I said, I definitely didn't cover every single nook and cranny of this plugin, but I really just wanted to show you some variation and how much you can actually do with this. I mean, I didn't get into like all the little nitty gritty things like resizing or something. Like, I'm sure you can figure that stuff out. But I mean, definitely one thing that I keep seeing people talk about is that they keep referring to it as like an EQ or just an EQ or a Gullfoss or something like that. And I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but like, it's clearly not. It's just not an EQ. It's not Gullfoss. It's not Soothe. You just can't do the stuff that you can do with this plugin with any of those tools. It's clearly in its own little category of things. If you're hearing that kind of stuff out there, you can be pretty sure that those people haven't used the plugin. And even just comparing it to a multiband compressor, like I was showing you earlier, like in order to get some of those types of sounds that you get out of certain that you can get with multiband compressors, I feel like with Blom you can just get those effects way quicker and easier. And even when I was talking with Hannes, we're both songwriters and we're in sessions a lot, and speed is of the utmost importance sometimes. It's not always just about like, perfection or something. It's about getting good results quickly. And Blom is like an insanely good tool for that. Like, I can super quickly get a vibe happening on my master bus if I need to, and not have to pull like a chain of like 3 or 4 plugins or whatever. I mean, obviously I have presets for stuff like that, but sometimes it's just nice to be able to like quickly put a thing in, start smashing it, and like kind of just shape the thing, tone shape. Anyway, the other big thing that I keep hearing about is the price. And while I do agree that it's definitely not on the cheaper end of things, it's also definitely not at the expensive end of plugins. I mean, Altiverb. What else is there? I mean, what's that hilarious one? Cedar Audio Adaptive Limiter or something. It's like $500 or something for a limiter. It's just, I don't know. Softtube, I think, makes a crazy limiter. Anyway, obviously there are specialized tools. Oh yeah, what? Synaptic has pretty expensive plugins too. I mean, they're creeping up there. Like, I think some of them are over $200. Obviously they're very special use case tools. But I feel like Blom is pretty unique. Like, again, like even if you compare it to like FabFilter's multiband MB, like that thing is I think $169, and so 170. It's like $30 difference. But when you put the FabFilter's MB next to Blom, it just seems old and dusty. And just the versatility of it. I would never grab FabFilter's multiband or other people's multibands for half the things that I would grab Blom for. So even just that is worth the extra $30 for me. Not to mention this little tidbit that we talked about in the interview. If you want to go back and listen to our full conversation, please go ahead. But we discussed the fact that nowhere on the plugin are decibels mentioned. During the beta testing, they were giving the plugin to people to use, and they were giving all those nitty-gritty informational details. People were actually making worse decisions because they were now not using their ears. They were focusing too much on the visual detail. And I honestly think that Blom really kind of, in the previous video, I said it forces you to listen, and I still kind of feel like that. I really feel like when I'm using it, I'm more intuitively just, sculpting almost. Like I'm pushing and pulling, and I'm not thinking about numbers and things like that. It has this sort of like clay-like effect of it, almost like where you're really just like, shaping sounds. So again, I think there's a lot of value there, and just some personal opinion, obviously. Like I said, it's definitely not like the cheapest plugin in the world, but honestly, I wouldn't say that it's like atrociously expensive either. So, and obviously, just like any plugin, it's not a panacea. Like there's no such thing as like one plugin to rule them all. I mean, is there? I don't know. Yeah, you tell me. OTT maybe, I think, you saw the OTT comparison. But anyway, I think it's a great addition to anybody's toolbox, and just a good complementary plugin in this the OEG family of, Soothe and Spiff. Like I said, it's not either of them, and it complements them well. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'll never ask for you to subscribe, but feel free to chat in the comments, because I am always interested in hearing people's opinions on stuff. Whoa, that was a weird sound. Did you hear that? Peace out. A-Town.